Hey, so today I'm starting the wire tuck on my 1995 Honda Civic. I swapped a K-Series into it and then took the engine back out in order to paint the engine bay, and we also did all the bodywork and paint on the car. Last week we got the brakes set up, and now it's time to do all the wiring on the car so that we can put the engine back in and actually have it start and run. I'm going to be starting on this driver's side. The original harness came out of that hole back there and kind of ran over and around and all through the engine bay. So we want to run it through the inner fender now just to clean everything up. So basic wire tuck is what we're doing here. I've already drilled a hole right there in order to pass the wires through. And on these Civics and on a lot of unibody cars, it's going to be a little complicated because what's actually happens is I drilled this hole through, but this hole doesn't lead to the inside of the car. This is a boxed in section, but there's another hole that actually leads into the inside of the car. So I'm going to have to fish the wires out through that hole, and then the wires will be in this boxed in section. Then I'll actually have to feed the wires out through this hole. So it's a little bit, it's not 100% straightforward, but I think it'll look clean in the end and it won't look too hacked up here. Another option is you can actually just feed the wires out through the OEM door plug right there. But I just didn't want to mess with that because it doesn't leak. It's OEM, it seals good. So we're gonna have to find a way to get this hole to seal. And this is the solution I've found. I'm going to be gluing one of these marine grade fittings in there. And this fitting, how it works is when you tighten it down after I pass the wires through, when I tighten it down, it'll collapse this little rubber seal here and actually seal the wires. So it will be waterproof. And for drilling the hole, I just use this simple step bit here. Here's the wiring harness over here. Currently, we only have a few things on here. We have the wiper motor, we have the headlight, the turn signal, and then we have a ground right here. We are gonna have to add an additional wire to this for the brake fluid level sensor, which hooks up right here. So we're gonna run those wires through this hole. Then we have our wiper motor, and both of those are gonna run down here. And I have this wire, this coat hanger in here now because I feeded that through, and you can see it's hanging right out that hole. So we're gonna be able to feed the wires. We'll attach them to the coat hanger and then just pull it through, and that's how we'll feed the wires. Now from the factory, this harness had some extra stuff. It had cruise control and it had the windshield wiper fluid wiring in there as well. So I de-pinned all that. And if you look at this pin, I do not think this is gonna fit through the hole we drilled because yeah, it's a bigger diameter than this. So we could go with a bigger fitting, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna de-pin all this. So I got a pen and paper right there. So we're gonna make a note of the entire layout of this connector. Got all the tools for everything right here. We also got a lot of wire loom, so we should have everything we need. So let's get started. Okay, so we took some notes over here of how this all works, and every connector is different, but on these Honda harness connectors that are in this shape, I think there's a few on the car, you'll basically have this little lock that goes in there, and unfortunately, the lock is just supposed to like fold up, but I always end up breaking these little tabs here, and honestly, it's just easier just to pull it off. So the lock just folds up, and then you're able to take that out, and then it's really easy to get these terminals out, and I'll try to show you how I do it. You can get one of these kits off Amazon. These are extremely cheap. There's much nicer ones available, but I've not had any issues with these. I usually end up using the smallest one. And you just want to make sure the wire is all the way seated, so just push on it a little. See how you can see it go up, and that'll allow it to unlock easier. That's one of the easiest mistakes, is you have to make sure you're putting a little bit of pressure on it. Then you just slide this in, kind of fold down, then it just pulls right out. So I'm going to go ahead and knock out the rest of these. Okay, so we were able to de-pin everything. We just actually now we have the wiper motor wiring all disconnected. So we're gonna get the brake fluid level sensor out of this harness. This was another harness that originally ran into the engine bay. And right here is the brake fluid sensor wires. So we want to make sure when we fish this through, when we fish that stuff through this hole up here, we fish it all through together. It'll just make our lives a lot easier. So I'm going to pull this out, pull the brake fluid level sensor out of this harness, tape those two together, and then we'll fish it both through. So quick update, I've got this wiper motor harness all loomed up. We're just gonna stick a little bit of heat shrink on the end here to keep this from fraying. And then I've also got this brake fluid level sensor all loomed up as well. Put a quick mark on it because I need to cut the rest of the loom off where it's just gonna merge in with the wiper motor harness. And then I was able to actually fish a wire through here as like a test. And I've got a much better location where it comes out. It comes out of that big hole as opposed to all the way up here at that other hole. So we're really happy with that. So that's just gonna be sitting here, and I'm gonna tape the harness to it and use that to fish it through. And what I've got here is a wire that I actually just fished through all the way into the inside of the car just to make sure everything's gonna work okay. And then I cut it to length. So this is the length my harness needs to be. So that way I can do it all on the table over there, as opposed to trying to do it on the car. When I lined up my test wire, I realized that I didn't actually have to extend any of these wires, so I just started looming everything up. I actually forgot to mention I have two grounds that are also part of this harness. One ground for the wiper motor and one ground for the brake level fluid sensor, so I added those as well. Then I did some heat shrink. I also used the OEM grommet here with a little bit of heat shrink to make it look really nice and be hopefully waterproof as seal. And here is the completed harness. And here I'm just taping the harness to the little wire that I fished through earlier. And once I tape it through, I'm going to be able to feed the harness through by pulling on the wire. So it actually wasn't too hard to feed the wire harness through, and you'll see the two grounds that are actually hanging out at the bottom here. I still need to figure out how to tie those in when I start doing the main harness for the headlights. And now I just started mocking up the headlight wires to see if I needed to extend them or not. After some few mock-ups, I decided I needed to extend it at least a few inches, so I ended up extending it 3 inches. And here you can see me just using these solder connectors, and I'll make sure to link these below. I think they're solder seal wire connectors. I just got them off Amazon. They seem to work really well and provide a really good waterproof seal. We'll see how they stand up to the test of time, but at least just with soldering these two wires together using them, it worked really well. Now I started to loom everything up, try to make it look nice. I got the headlight on the table so I can get everything assembled on the table here. Here, what I'm holding in my hand is a bundle of what is going to be the ground wires. I added 2 extra ones for the wiper motor and the brake fluid level sensor that I'm going to splice later together. And then I have 2, one for the headlight and one for the blinker light, so 4 total. So I crimped all those together onto a ring terminal, add a little bit of solder, and then use some heat shrink, and I was actually really happy with how this turned out. So it's much less bulky than the original one, and I can just bolt this somewhere on the inner fender in order to ground all the components in the harness. So now with both harnesses kind of in the right spot, I had to actually pull apart the harness a little bit to get the grounds out of it. And then here you can kind of see where I actually spliced the 2 grounds together from the 2 harnesses. Sorry I didn't do a very good job of taking a video of this. But after I got the grounds spliced together, I was able to get the harnesses all loomed up back together. And I actually also glued in that little waterproof seal I was talking about earlier off camera. I don't know why I didn't record that, but I just glued it in there. Nothing really complicated there. And now you can see I'm just going to start fishing the wires through. Okay, so we just got the wires fed through, and we skipped ahead a little bit here. We have everything pinned back up, except for our brake fluid sensors just hanging out, because we got to plug that into the other harness. We used our little key right here that I wrote down earlier. So now it's time to see if everything works. I'm gonna pop the trunk. I'm gonna go back here. So let's flip this over. Okay. Well, it sparked a little bit. Okay, let's go up front and see. We should have power. Okay, we have power. I'm gonna plug this in. Should have plugged it in before, but there we go. Okay. Okay, we are hooked up. So. Okay, so lights. One light's on, right? Wow, I did that wrong. It's awful. Okay, so we just tightened this ground. I forgot that I did not tighten this. Hopefully this fixes our issue because the dash was all lit up like a Christmas tree. Which I'd expect if one thing wasn't working, but okay. There we go. Lights. Heck yeah. Blinker. Oh my god. High beam, low beam. High beam. Awesome. What else? Windshield wipers. Yes. Oh my god. What else? That's it. We took everything else out. Oh my gosh, dude. That is awesome. Wow. That is so awesome. Okay, it worked.